Alrighty, here we are on the InfoWars. Berlin to build new alien invasion hub for over 1,000 third worlders as locals face housing crisis. Alrighty, let's get into her. The site, once a Nazi labor camp and later an airport, has long been protected by a 2014 law banning new construction, but that law is now being overridden for migrant housing. Yeah, so they won't let the natives build on the land, but the government, they want the cheap labor and the replacement labor. So yeah, they'll build on the land. Not for the natives, but for the invaders. Yeah, go figure. According to the Social Democrats SPD, the facility will open in the second half of 2028, offering between 1,000 and 1,100 beds. The justification, she says, is that Berlin's regular shelters for migrants are overflowing. Well, yeah, you keep letting in migrants. Sports and leisure areas are expected to remain intact, though minor amenities like mini golf course and barbecue lawn will be relocated. Officials were keen to stress that historical sensitive parts of the former forced labor camp will be left untouched. Part of me wants to say it's ironic that they're bringing in these migrants for cheap labor and replacement labor, and they're putting them on a former labor camp, but that could just be me. Meanwhile, discussions about using Tempelhofer Field for urgently needed housing for Berliners remain on the back burner. 6 proposals for the future of the field are being reviewed, but no discussions will be made until at least September, and a public referendum may be required. The planned asylum facility will go ahead regardless of what Berliners decide. Yeah, so the actual citizens, they don't get a say. Lovely. This decision follows a pattern of prioritizing asylum seekers over local residents. Yeah, gee, I wonder why. It's almost like the government hates the native population and they're prioritizing the asylum seeker or the migrant. In 2023, Remix News reported that a new social housing complex in the Spandau district would be reserved exclusively for refugees. The complex, consisting of 128 apartments built by the city-owned WBM Housing Association, was to house 570 asylum seekers indefinitely, despite the long wait for Berliners seeking social housing. The financial burden of migration continues to mount for the city. In 2023, Berlin spent at least 2.1 billion on asylum seekers and related costs, accounting for 5% of its entire budget. Damn. The state government, facing rising expenses, has turned to emergency borrowing. In March, Economics Senator Franziska Giffey confirmed that Berlin will take on new debt to cover refugee-related spending. Yeah, see, that's a red flag. If you have to go into debt to cover refugee spending, maybe you should cut refugee spending. Taking advantage of relaxed rules under the so-called debt brake introduced by the new Grand Coalition government, this allows the city to borrow approximately 670 million annually, totaling 1.3 billion for the 2026 and 2027 budgets. While money is being poured into housing for migrants, Berliners are facing a severe housing shortage. Germany's largest cities are short an estimated 800,000 apartments. At the same time, office vacancy rates are at a record high, with enough empty office space to create around 152 homes nationwide. Well, damn. So, my thinking on all of this, the government is housing and spending all this money on refugees and migrants, yet the native Germans are struggling to find housing or even being able to afford housing. So what happens to the native Germans if they can't find housing? Well, they move to other countries. I made a video a few days ago about how Germans would really consider leaving Germany. So what is that called when a group of people leaves an area? Now, are the Germans forced to leave an area? Well, they can't find any housing or they can't afford housing. So it's not that they're forced, but it's not exactly on their own free will. So coercion? So what is it called when a group of people is coerced or forced to leave an area? I think it's called ethnic cleansing. So let's see what the Google says about that. Ethnic cleansing is the systematic forced removal of ethnic, racial, or religious groups from a given area. Now again, are Germans being forced to leave? Well, no, but if they can't find housing, i.e., the government's giving it to the migrants and the refugees, what are they supposed to do? The only option is to either live in an apartment buildings too are being taken up by migrants. So what are they to do? There's only one option, and that's to leave. So, like I said earlier, I view it as a form of coercion. So I would say that the ethnic cleansing is still valid. And it even says here, the form of ethnic cleansing is displacing. Are native Germans being displaced? Well, yeah. In the ethnic cleansing paragraph here, it says to make the society ethnically homogeneous. So, in my opinion, what the government's doing is the reverse. They don't want it to be homogeneous, so they're making it near impossible for the native Germans to get housing. So the native Germans have to leave. Now, I found a video from the UK of this English woman talking about a similar situation, so I'm going to pop that video in and fill in my thoughts about that.
23 brand new houses, 4 bedroom, 3 bedroom, 2 bedroom. And guess what nationality hasn't got none of them? Let's have a guess, shall we? 23, 1 big 4 bedroom, some 3 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms. And not one English has got it. And I know because I've lived in this area for 40 years nearly. And they knocked the old school down to build them. And they built a new school, which is shite.
Wow, not one of those homes went to an English person. Maybe that's why the English go north and buy land in Scotland, if they can afford it. I imagine the Scots would be pretty PO'd at that.
And you can guess who goes there. But yeah, so that's it, people. 23 brand new spanking homes, all gone to everyone else except for the English. How's about that, eh? Entertainment purposes only, people.
So yeah, the same stuff that's going on in Germany is also going on in England. And why? Low birth rate. So they have to bring in people. And you know what? While corporate's at it, they want cheap labor. And hey, what happens with diversity? Diversity is another word for division, because you have a whole whack of groups. And the saying with divide and conquer, it's a form of control. Well, anywho, that's it for my thoughts on this matter. Take care out there in Clown World.